So I'm not used to using this web tool here, but I'm assuming I'm sharing the screen. My screen shows up okay?
Your screen looks great.
Okay, perfect. Okay, well, I guess we'll go ahead and get this started. My name is Jason Axelston. I'm the subject matter expert for Fluke for what we call ADT, which is Advanced Diagnostic Tools. That covers really scopes and power quality and battery analyzers. So I'm here to discuss the 173X series and the types of applications that may come up that people would want to use it for, and why you would want to use it for that type of process, and then some of the differences between the models. I guess we'll go ahead and get started here. On the PowerPoint presentation I have brought up here on the first slide, really we're just the 1736 and 38 are two of the models, and then there's also the 1732 and 34 models. So there's a total of 4 different units in the series. I'll go ahead and go to the next slide here. So what are the Fluke 173X power quality and energy loggers? So basically, with the 1736 and 38, they have the ability to do a little bit more recording. So in this case, I'll just run through just kind of a brief overview. The 36 and 38 models, those ones are specifically designed for applications that would also, lead into not just doing energy logging and load studies, but also doing recording or, capturing of event-related information, like inrush measurements and dips and swells and more detailed harmonic data. And then also, of course, there's software that goes along with the package too. The next one of these. So really what we're here to discuss is the types of applications that would be involved, and also, we could discuss some of who actually uses the product. So, pretty straightforward here. Industries, really anybody that deals with power at all, period. So any type of commercial enterprise, industrial enterprise, that, anybody, electricians, plant managers, plant engineers, anybody who deals with maintenance, and has to make any kind of power measurements or deals with power in any form or fashion at all. So we'll get started in discussing some of the applications for the product. One of those would be the typical application that most people would ask about for this product line is what's called a load study. So all of the 173X product line models support the ability to do load studies. It doesn't really matter which one you're picking. All the 1732, 34, 36, and 38 will all do a load study. So essentially, when you're considering doing a load study, it's like, so why would you be doing a load study? So usually the reason for doing that would be is if you want to see how much flexibility there is in the existing service to add additional loads. So sometimes rather than spending the money to go forward and changing out a panel, changing out transformers, increasing the service size, you would do a load study to verify if it's really even necessary or warrants doing that. There are some guidelines for doing load studies. NEC 220 would be one of the guidelines that gives you some basically allowance for doing up to a 30-day load study. Also, there's a 1-year provision, but you can do a 30-day load study, and all 4 models will support doing a 30-day load study. They have more than sufficient memory to record that long. But the other reason would be is to see if maybe you have too much load in the system. So maybe you have some overheating issues, something where the equipment isn't functioning properly. So that would be another reason to be doing a load study. Also, it could be that the equipment that you have operating, maybe some of those loads could be moved to different operational time windows to save money. So if your billing rate varies at different times during the day, you may be able to change operational considerations of the facility to operate certain loads at a different time of day. So performing a load study would allow you to see when those loads are in operation. So all of these are reasons why you would use it. Also, you know, another reason would be is sometimes circumstances where you have an electrical panel, and again, somebody may just want to add some temporary load to it, but we're not sure if it would compromise the existing circumstances of the way the panel is designed. So also a load study could be done to determine feasibility of adding additional load to a panel even on a temporary basis. But that's probably one of the most common things we're asked about, or, you know, applications would be trying to see how much load there is. And all the 173X series have the capability to do that. 1732 again, 1734, 1736, and 1738. Are we able to take, I don't want to keep talking nonstop, but is there some other questions revolving around doing load studies with the 173X series? Do I have to change some permissions here? Yeah, don't see anything here. We have the chat window here. Okay, I don't see anything, so I'll just go on. So the next thing would be when we talk about a load study for the 173X series, the meter is just recording current only. So sometimes people will use energy study and load study interchangeably. In this case, when we're talking about a load study on the 173X products, we're just recording amperage. So the advantage of also doing a load study is that all the meters support what's called a load study mode for simplicity. So you can configure the unit to just record current only, and you don't need to put voltage leads in place. And you could start a recording, and amperage is it'll record total harmonic distortion and frequency, and then amperage. And then those are the things that'll get recorded over time there for you. Now, if it's an energy study you're looking for, you generally are going to want to quantify how much power consumption there is also. So what we'll do here is, let me switch my screens up here since we're talking about the load study. So I'm going to go to another screen here I have. So essentially this is just a live video of the 1736 hooked up to a circuit. So what we have here is on the interface for the whole unit is we have a push button interface that can be used. And then we also have, it's a touchscreen interface. So we can also, for example, in this case, what I want to do is I want to change the configuration maybe. So we're talking about right now doing a load study or an energy study. So again, we could either touch the screen here, or we can just push, and then you have the option to pick between energy study or load study. So for these meters, load study is just going to do current only. And then if you do energy study, it's really everything. So if you don't want to miss out on any information, then energy study would be the type of recording session that you'd want to pick. But again, we can do, it'll either be operated via touchscreen, in this case. Of course, I can't see anything here. There we go. Try to get to this a little easier. So the configuration here again, once you've gone through and selected energy study or load study, again, energy study would still do all the same things, but energy study is going to also include power measurements. So your kWs, your kVAR, it'll also include, your power factor as well. So if you need power factor, you would definitely be doing an energy study. That would be one of the key differences there would be is again, you can either do load study or energy study, but just keep in mind that you won't get any power measurements if you're using the load study in this case. So basically, some of the reasons if you're doing, again, energy study would be as if you want to, a lot of times when you're installing or upgrading equipment or people are making system upgrades, what happens is that the information or the upgrades, is a lot of times being done in the name of energy efficiency. So sometimes there's a promise made that a certain amount of money will be saved in the process, or a certain amount of energy reduction will take place. So in those cases, you can use any of these models to do recording or do an energy study if you want to record how much power consumption there is before and after. The 1732 and the 1734, they're geared towards really doing energy studies and load studies. So they have more limited event recording capability, but any of those models could be used for recording both load, and energy for doing, again, looking at how much power consumption there is happening and how much cost there is. The other reason for doing it would be providing a case for upgrading equipment. So maybe in a facility, that there is some equipment that exists that has improved capability, and maybe you can do a piece-by-piece replacement of the equipment and then characterize the energy consumption and look at the savings over time would be another reason also. And then, if you're doing, recording, like maybe you're doing plant shutdowns, for example, and you're dropping loads from the service, you can also quantify energy savings based on loads that are no longer part of the system anymore, just to see how those impacted overall cost or energy consumption. So that's another common thing we get asked as an energy study. So again, for the 17.3x series, you have energy study, which is for us includes power measurements. Load study is just current only. So that's really going to be the big difference there. And again, on the meters display for the 173X series, you have the ability to see these things in a real-time view, just instantaneous. And then you also have the ability to go into live trend information over time. So that can be seen also. And then all this data that's collected can be downloaded as well, which we can discuss a little bit here too. What we'll do is we'll go back. Some of the features back here. So if we go back here and we take a look at some of the unique features, and again, we have the live video too, but it's probably a little easier to see these stationary pictures. But some of the features that make the 173X product unique is that the compact size. So if you have very small panel space, when you're doing your studies and recordings, the meter itself has a very small profile, but the power supply itself can be detached. So there's a cable that also ships with the unit, so you can detach the power supply from the back, making it even thinner. So allowing it to fit in, very, very small spaces. So that's one of the features that exists. The other thing is the inputs. Current inputs are all keyed, and then we have a certain range of current clamps that will go with the unit. So you don't need to worry about how do I configure the unit to accept a certain type of current clamp. The meter will detect the clamp you're using when you connect it and set up scaling automatically. The unit also, again, has, if you're doing the 17, 36, and 38, you'll have the additional capability to do a neutral measurement. When we're looking at the 32 and the 34, those don't include a neutral. So that's going to be the difference here at the top comparing the two. The other difference here is going to be is that there's a slide switch on the power supply. So we've had different kinds of power quality products over the years. And one of the common things that people have is variable power requirements for powering the unit. 120 is not always accessible. So you can either slide this switch over to reveal a 120 volt input, which just uses a regular power cord. Or the other thing you can do is you can slide it back over to expose these two banana jacks here, and then those will cable into the voltage lead assembly, allowing you to measure, basically all the way up to 500 volts is what you can use to supply power to the unit itself. So if you have a 480 volts, system, you can just use it for the power. You don't need 120 there. So that's something that's been added. And again, the slider just slides back and forth to switch between one or the other. And as you can see, when you switch it over, you'll have the power cord input here. And then also a couple other features that are built into the unit is data can be downloaded by simply inserting a USB stick into the unit. You don't need to have a laptop present, or if you have people in the field, a lot of times we deal with customers and people who are in the field and they don't have a laptop, they don't have the software, or if they have a laptop, they downloaded the wrong software, or multitude of reasons why they don't have the software available, even though it's on our web page. So this allows a customer or somebody the customer is working with to simply take a USB stick, walk out to the meter, and then you can insert the USB stick, and the meter will ask you simply if you want to copy the existing data to the USB stick. The beauty of this is you don't need to stop the recording process at all. You just keep the recording going, and then you can just collect the data that's currently been logged to the meter's internal memory, which when doing load studies and energy studies, like 30-day studies, we get frequently asked by customers and individuals that I just want to go there and I'm being told I need to just grab some data now that's been recorded. But even though the 30-day isn't complete, you can do that by just simply inserting a USB stick and doing a data transfer. You could also use direct USB to a PC, or the unit does, which we'll talk about, support wireless transfer. So you can download data wirelessly to your computer also, if you happen to have the Fluke software. Another feature is the auxiliary inputs. So this meter happens to have a connection channel here where you can hook up, there's basically the meter has an external accessory you can use to allow tying into it up to 2 external channels. For recording, like a couple examples would be like pressure or temperature, and you can scale the units manually. So it allows for you to make those changes here. Next screen here. So basic functionality. What we'll do here, I think, is we'll go back to discussing some of the different applications. I know that we need to go through all the push button presses here. But what we can discuss is some of the other reasons for using the 17.3X series in applications. So one of the other applications, is the ability to measure harmonics. So all of this 173X series support the ability to do harmonic measurements. So they all can at least do total harmonic distortion. So one of the things that can happen in a facility is that you have maybe motors that are running high in temperature. Maybe you have noisy transformers or transformers that are overheating. So these are some signs that you could have harmonic content present in the system. So any of them could be used to measure total harmonic distortion for both voltage and current to at least give you an idea of the percentage of harmonic content. So usually as a baseline here for harmonic content, you're looking at a 5% for voltage and a 20% for amperage. But 20% for amperage can vary depending upon how much load is on the panel that you're measuring. But that's one of the things that we get asked about is harmonic measurements. The difference on the 17, 36, and 38 is that those models will also give you the ability to measure individual harmonic orders as well. So you can do measurements behind, basically get all the way, all of the harmonic orders up to the 50th is what we're supporting on the 17, 36, and 38. So what I'll do here is we'll switch over to back over to the live screen. So some of the things that we can do here, again, with the meter is that we have the ability to go back here and we'll navigate to the setup. So the navigation, again, for the tool, fairly simple. Again, you have a push button interface, but you can also use the keypad to scroll through things as well. You can go to here and see the live meter view, and at the bottom you do have some alternative options here. And in this case, a couple of the key features that the 17.3x series has to make things simpler for you is at the bottom there's something called Verify Connection. Just a little bit. There we go. So with Verify Connection, trying to make things a little simpler, one of the things that we deal with customers on a regular basis is people who have miswiring. So if we go to Verify Connection here, the tool will do a pre-check for you to let you know if there's any problems here. And down in the corner it says no errors detected in my case because I got everything's configured correctly. But you have the ability here, if there are errors detected, you can have the meter try to correct the condition that's present automatically for you without adjusting any wiring, which makes this a really, really simple feature. However, if we go back to F4 here and go to correct digitally, we also give you the option to manually access and move things around. If maybe there's been some adjustments in the panel and things can't be accessed anymore, you have the ability to reverse current clamps here, and you have the ability to swap phases here if you want to. So that's one of the convenience features that's built into the unit. The other thing that we have the ability to show here in the tool is of course you can look at a live scope waveform screen. And then we also have the ability to, pick which type of parameter that you want to see in the screen. So maybe we want to look at amperage waveforms. We can go and look at amperage as well. And then you can also go back to looking at just as a live screen view. And then one of the other things that we can do on the tool, go back here. Let's see, basic here. So when we go back to change configuration here, the tool also has the ability for you, again, to set up auxiliary channels. And then there's event information here, which exists in the 17, 36, and 38. And you can just simply, again, push button navigation here to bring up the configuration for the unit. Makes, again, navigation really quite simple. Verify connection again. And we can also look, and there's a phasing diagram here. So if you want to also use the phasing diagram as a reference for connection, we have that built into the tool also. But the other thing that we were discussing here again is applications involving harmonics. So usually having transformer problems, damaged power factor correction capacitors, again, motor loads that are overheating that maybe weren't before could be a source of harmonics. So the 1736 and 38 give you the ability to measure individual harmonic orders. And if you're using the 32 and 34, you can also look at THD. So you can gauge if there really is harmonic content that would be a possible issue that needs to be, more evaluations required, which the 36 and 38 can also do. Go back here. Okay, so configuration, date and time information, kind of generic here. You also have the ability to set up the cost figure for energy consumption. So the tool allows you to do that, enter in units, but you can also do a custom value, and you can change those on the fly too if you're doing energy studies. That information can be changed either now or later in the software. So you don't really need to worry about making a mistake, because those cost figures can be dealt with later as you're creating, creating a software report. Here's an example of an advantage when you're using a load study. The other thing we deal with customers sometimes is location. Doesn't very well permit a terminal connection to connect the alligator clips to make a live voltage connection. So in those circumstances, a lot of times, again, it comes back to only wanting to do a load study and see how much load exists at that particular disconnect or panel. So in this case, it just gives you an example that if it's not convenient to make a voltage connection, you can use load study, and then there's no need to connect the voltage leads at all in the configuration. So it just makes it very simple there. And then we do support a pretty broad range of topologies inside the meter that can be used, that also are accompanied with the wiring diagram in the display. And then the next thing here would be is going into beyond just harmonics would be event-related problems. So unexplained equipment malfunction, equipment that discontinued operation and needed to be repaired or replaced, or things that just aren't working properly or work intermittently. Could be related to what we consider to be a voltage event or voltage variation. The sampling rate for the 173X series, the sampling rate is always half cycle sampling. So it doesn't matter whether you're going for a 1732, 34, 36, or 38, the sampling rate is the same. The difference is going to be is that when you set up a recording session in like the 32 or the 34, you tell it how often you want to store the min, max, and average measurements you're taking. And depending upon what that period is, you'll know that the maximum measurement that took place within a certain time period, but you won't know how long it was or exactly when it started or ended. Or you also won't have the ability to capture multiple events in a time period. So with the 17, 36, and 38, they capture, dips and swells and interruptions. And, when you're using energy study, it's going to capture that information and store it in there for you with detail. So as well as inrush current, and you can set inrush triggering too. So if you're trying to determine if there's a systematic event, a lot of times they're very intermittent. And again, these tools will detect down to 1/2 of a cycle time of change, but it's an intermittent problem, and you can't have somebody there 24/7. And sometimes these problems happen when people aren't working at a facility. Or you think something's happening, or a common thing we see is a lot of times a piece of equipment is not working properly or fails, and you're looking to the company to get warranty service for it. Or maybe this is the second time the equipment's failed, or maybe once, and the company's coming back to you and saying, this isn't our fault. There's something going on with your electrical system, or there's dips happening or outages, or there's some kind of voltage problem. So in those kind of cases, the 17, 36, and 38 would be ideal tools to use for this, because you can quantify and capture multiple events over time with precise detail, so that if you're trying to show somebody who's asking about the quality of the power in the system that you have there because of things like malfunctions, which may be not related to the equipment manufacturer, which could be, again, for warranty purposes. So this would allow you to capture and document that information and provide it back to the manufacturer. So that's one of the uses for being able to capture this. but also to be able to quantify what kind of events are going on in your system. There's always going to be events typically, but knowing how those events impact the system is really the big issue. I mean, some events are acceptable and some are not. So what we'll also do is with the 173X series, which would be like in this case the 17.6 or the 1738, you have the ability to also not only just capture event information, but you have the ability to also graph it against a standard. So the tool also can take the data and put it up against some trends like the ITIC and Sabima curves, and then you can see where do these fall relating to the operation of the electronic equipment. Would this be something that's causing permanent damage, just operational problems, or is it really acceptable? So there are some ways you can trend this out in our software, the Energy Analyze Plus software for the unit as well. But, again, if you need details and you're having equipment problems or you're having equipment fail and the manufacturer doesn't think it's because of the design of the product, then having a way to capture and record this and document this information is critical here. And the 1736 and 38 give you a detail this amount of information for you so that you'll have that, and then you can provide it as a record to them. So those are probably some of the most common reasons that we would get requests for using the 173X series. What we could also do is go in and take a closer look at the software. But again, just to recap, the load studies, energy studies, some kind of events happening in the system, or even just quantifying harmonics that are present in the system, depending upon if filters need to be put in place or the use of, power factor correction devices. So if you need to employ power factor correction, then the 1732, 34, 36, and 38 will all allow you to make power factor measurements. So if maybe you find that you're getting with power factor, that can always cause issues in a facility where you can get, extra charges. So build extra charges if your power factor isn't within limits. So those models would all allow you to make those power factor measurements and record them over a 30-day time period or longer. So I think that pretty much sums up the majority of the capabilities of the 173X series. The other thing I was going to mention, some other capabilities of the tool that we haven't really discussed. I'll go forward here. Would be the ability to do some communications to like a phone is another thing. That's kind of another function capability, the unit's capable of. So the advantage would be is if you have the unit hooked up an electrical panel, what I'll do here is I'll switch my screen over here, screen 2. So what I have here as an example is there's an application that we run that we have called Fluke Connect. So with the Fluke Connect application, you can actually, in this case, capture measurements. Basically it gives you the ability to connect to different types of Fluke devices. But in this case, I'm connected to the Fluke 1736. So one of the things that you can do with your phone also is if you happen to, most people are carrying around a phone nowadays, but you have the ability to bring up and look at live measurements on the actual display of the unit. So if you're hooked up into the electric panel and you can't get back in there, you have the ability to connect up and bring up the application information on the device here, and you can see it on your phone if you want to be able to capture that information. And this information can also be shared with other people. If you allow other people in your connection, you can talk to them while sharing this information live. and you can also save this information and then have access to it on a web server location. So just an additional feature of the 1730 series. Now, this function supported on the 32, 34, 36, and 38. All of them support the capability to be able to do this. So you're not limited to just one particular model. Go back here. So again, have the ability to connect to any of the models and show live readings on your phone, as well as, again, you can have voice and video and share that with somebody too when you're in the field if you're making measurements, so they can see what you're looking and doing, but also they could see the live measurements here if you wanted to share those with somebody else. And then, of course, you can take screenshots of whatever you have. And then you have the ability to download a file from the stored memory in the unit as well. And then that would get downloaded into your phone and then could be uploaded to the cloud server so you can download it from a web-based tool. And then next would be the Fluke Energy Analyze Plus. So it looks like we've probably reached our limits here on the discussion of the 17.3x with different applications, but one of the other things would be is using the actual Energy Analyze Plus software. So in here, we just give you some visual examples. I also happen to have, pull this up here, close this out here. Okay. So with Energy Analyze Plus, you have the ability to create reports as well as trend data over time. What I'll do here is I'll share one under here. So as an example with Energy Analyze Plus, when you're doing, right now I happen to do one of the applications we're talking about as a load study. So in this case, by default, we usually name it LS for load study, but you can change all these parameters about the tool. But essentially, the Energy Analyze Plus software allows you to trend various parameters in the software package, as well as we offer like what we call a calendar view. So if you're looking at breaking down and maybe energy consumption over certain hours of use, it'll just kind of give you an overall profile to see when your usage times are occurring. But also you have the ability to switch between viewing things as just a table of information over time, and also viewing things as a trend over time. And the software, of course, allows you to scale. You can zoom in and zoom out, adjust colors if you want to for preferences. But also you have the ability to create reports. And reporting in Energy Analyze is a fairly simple function. So anytime you're in the load study or energy study, and you have data brought up here you want to put into a report, you simply, in the upper corner here, basically you just click Add Bookmark in the upper right corner of the software. And when you end up going into your Report tab, it puts everything here for you. And the way you create a report is simply just drag and drop. It's pretty simple. And you can reorder these if you want to. And you can also view what the information would look like in a condensed screen. And you can even rename the information, because usually you'll end up with a lot of information in here. So that allows you to keep track of everything. And then we allow you to print this to a PDF report if you wanted to. And you can also export data to an Excel spreadsheet. So that really, there's a lot more detailed things we can get into, but it's not really the scope of this discussion here. We're just focused more on applications that could be, applications that the 173X would be the answer to, which again, primarily the 1732 and 34 would be back to, load studies and energy studies. And you can also do some characterization of event information, but not in detail. And you can also capture total harmonic distortion for voltage and current to quantify if, you really do have a significant amount of harmonics in a system, which could cause effects like overheating in motors and transformers. The other thing would be is capturing more detailed events. So harmonic orders, so detailed harmonic information, dips and swells and sags and outages and inrush measurements. And those are things that could be captured with the 1736 and 38. Now, there is also another difference with the 1736 and 38. So the 1736 and 38 also, the 38 has the ability to do some additional troubleshooting for you. So one of the things I'll bring back up here. So I'll bring back up the slide here. So basically the Fluke 1738 also offers what's called PQ Health. So the 1738, what this allows you to do is that it evaluates your measurement information you've been recording and then compares it against a standard, which in this case would be EN 5160. So basically how it works is you can see in the color graph window here, it's showing you essentially the frequency, the voltage variations, and the harmonics, and these are all parameters. Let's see, make sure I'm sharing the right monitor here. So those share, basically a color coding scheme. So, anything green would be within limits, anything red would be out of limits. So how this makes things or improves your time is a lot of times people want to know, where's the problem in my system? Can I just send you all my data and have you look at it? So this is really kind of a built-in troubleshooting tool for the end users that, well, what you can do is you can go in and look at the PQ Health screen on the unit and then pull this up and it will show you all of your measurements and you can see quickly, oh, well, this is where my problem is at because I have a red bar here. Now I know to go look at this data. It saves you an incredible amount of time. So again, this is one of the things that's built into the Fluke 1738. So the ability to compare data against a standard of measurement. And so this again would have impacts on, again, harmonics as well as event measurements. So like dips and swells and sags and also unbalance is another thing that this will also track, as well as frequency changes. So this is just another powerful feature that the 1738 incorporates. The 1736 would allow you still to view the event data, but doesn't compare it against a baseline, it doesn't compare it against a standard of measurement. And I think that that probably concludes the presentation. Hopefully I haven't been completely boring people to death here, but any types of questions or answers would be great. And yeah, I guess I see an answer here. It looks like we were shooting for an hour on the presentation. Looks like I went a little bit over, but I didn't want to go into too much detail on the software.
Jason, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Mm-hmm.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, actually, I think you're just under, so I think we're good. There were a few questions that came in. I'll read them off, and maybe if you want to answer them later, that's fine. We could always follow up with the customer or attendee here as well. But if you've got the
either way,
great too.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. What are the questions?
First question is: would adding a backup generator be an application for these products?
Yeah. So this would have the ability to measure, relative to a generator as well. So that is a good question. That's something that comes up quite often is people want to do generator testing. So the one thing that this would allow you to measure, energy produced based on generators or, like elevators as an example, for, code generation. So it'll measure that for you. However, it's not a usable tool for measuring generator switching. So if the application they're trying to do is to do a switch, if they're monitoring the transition as a generator switches over or power switches to generator, we do have other power quality tools that can do that, like the 430 series, like the 435. But the 1730 series cannot do generator switching applications and record the waveform data with reasonable resolution.
Okay, great. And feel free, if you ask that question, feel free just to confirm if that answered you.
Yeah, if that answers what you were asking. Exactly.
Yeah. The next question was, do you have to manually enter in the topology?
Yeah, so the topology, that's also a good question. Yeah, so the tool itself will not auto-detect the topology you're using, so you do have to pick one. So, of course, most of the time you're doing wire delta. For Fluke, the way we do things is that Y for us will give you a phase to neutral voltage measurement, and delta is phase to phase. So one of the key things is the meter won't automatically set up your voltage for you. It will give you a list of voltages that it thinks you might be using that you can pick from, but you have to select the correct voltage, or you can put in a custom voltage. But if you don't set up the voltage correctly, then in the case of like the 17, 36, and 38, the voltage events wouldn't be, the risk would be is they won't be scaled or captured. So that you would want to make sure the topology is selected manually.
Okay. Next question, and I'll ask you kind of two questions because I think they're fairly similar here. One of them was, do these use split core or Rogowski CTs? And then the other question kind of related to the CT is, if you have a CT set up backwards, would the connection detection see it?
So that's a good question. I was going to kind of do a little picture example here, but I probably should have done that. So we do supply Rogowski coil standard with the meter when you order it, which are 1500 amps for the range. And we do have larger clamps that go up to higher ranges if that's necessary. We also do have smaller clamps, which are the toroidal type transformers, so smaller core transformers that could be used for doing like secondary measurements off of medium to high voltage systems. So if you have a CT or a PT involved, there are CTs for that purpose. What was the other part of the question again? The last part?
I think you have the CTs set up in a backwards.
Yeah, backwards, right.
Yeah.
So yes, so when you connect up the CTs backwards, and go in to do verify connection, it'll show you that you have reverse rotation. And then you can either have it auto-correct that for you. You could correct it manually, or you can just take the CT manually and disconnect it and turn it around if you're in the panel already. But if you can't touch something, you can use the keypad to do an auto-correct, or you can manually correct for the reversal, but it'll show you that.
Okay, great. Another one from Dan was, what is the capacitor symbol on the unit for?
Yeah, so the unit will allow you to tell whether the meter is dealing with leading or lagging power factor. So, voltage leads current. So Eli the Iceman, I'm sure a lot of people remember that one from school maybe. But the unit will allow you to denote whether power factor is more capacitive or more inductive. And you can, the software will allow you to pick one or the other. So if your preference is to just see the number as power factor, then you can look at it as power factor, but the symbolism there is whether or not the load's more inductive or capacitive.
Okay, and then let me read this one first. Does the cost data collection allow input for time of use energy rates, or is it just a single cost per kilowatt value?
Yeah, so what I don't know if am I still showing my secondary screen with the software open here? Give me a second here. Am I still sharing?
You are.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're seeing the Fluke
Yeah, what I was gonna
software.
do, yeah, let me open up let's see. This was a file I had earlier. So I can open up, nope, it's not on my network. Let's see here. Yeah, not a file. I'm just looking here to see if I can find a file here. Let's see, that's load study. Let's see. Data files. Demo file. Probably should have the demo file ready here. Sorry for the delay here. Okay, so I've got a file open up here. So if you go to energy study and demand, so here's the cost figure information here. What we can do is I think it only allows you to put in one. Yeah, you're only allowed to put in one cost figure for evaluation. You can set up, oh no, let me see, ratio 1. Can we add in? Oh no, we can't add multiple ratios in for start and end times. Okay, I apologize for that. It's not something I normally get asked, but we did, it looks like, allow you to incorporate multiple energy costs for different periods of time. I don't remember that was always originally an option, but it looks like it was added to Energy Analyze. So we do have that ability here to do that. So the answer is yes, you can put in multiple energy cost figures. Are you hearing me?
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that was the end of. I saw you.
Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, make sure that's.
And then, so other question is difference between the 1738 and the 1738B. There's just a couple questions here.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, that's a good question just because we didn't touch on the submodels. So the B version, which we consider to be what we call the basic model. So the B version doesn't ship with current clamps. So the Rogowski coils wouldn't come with the B version. Sometimes customers want different clamps, so they have the ability to order the basic. But the other thing about the basic version is the basic version doesn't ship with the Wi-Fi adapter. But the Wi-Fi adapter can be ordered separately, but the Wi-Fi adapter will not come with the basic version, and neither will the flexible current clamps. But it comes with all the other accessories, so alligator clips, case, test leads, meter, power supplies, all that stuff ships with it. It's just no Wi-Fi adapter and no current clamps.
Okay. The last couple questions here real quick is, would the use of variable frequency drives negatively affect the effectiveness of reading on the 173X, or would you need an oscilloscope for better accuracy?
Sure. Yeah, that's a very good question. That comes up a lot also. So this is kind of a segue, I guess, for the Norma 6000. But the 173X series would be negatively impacted if you're trying to use it to measure on the output side of a variable speed drive. So you can certainly measure the power coming into a drive, but you would be much better off using like either the Fluke 190 series, a scope with isolated channels. So the Scope 190 series, the MDA, the motor drive analyzer, or the newer Norma 6000 would be an appropriate option, which also uses isolated channels and can measure higher frequencies. So those would be some suitable products, but the 173X series would not be a good idea for the drive output.
Okay, got it. Let's see, one more here. To confirm, the 1732 and 1734 only only uses 3 current clamps, and the 1736 and 1738 need 4 current clamps if you want to measure the neutral, correct?
That is correct. So the 1732 and 34 do not have a neutral option there. So that input will be missing on those 2 versions, but it's on the 1736 and 38.
Okay. I think that was it. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah. Also, if people have comments or suggestions on the way a presentation is done or handled, that would always be awesome. Just since we're paving some new ground to some extent with the current climate everybody's dealing with these days.
Yeah, no kidding. Well,
that'd be excellent.
Yeah, that'd be excellent. I do appreciate you guys' time. Jason, very much appreciate your time as well for presenting and getting through all this.
No problem. Yeah, I appreciate everybody taking the time to come and spend some of their time today doing this. Yeah. And if you guys have any feedback for us, please, I think there'll be a follow-up email that goes out from GoToWebinar, and in that we'll have my contact information. If you guys have any questions, for sure. Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day. Yeah, thanks. Oh, yeah. Appreciate it.